I'm Dilek Tuna and you're watching A News. Now let's take a look at today's top stories. US President Donald Trump said during a press conference that the US will govern Venezuela until there's a proper transition. Volodymyr Zelensky said that Ukraine has a new chance to finish this war prior to announcing a meeting with Donald Trump. The death toll in Iran continues to rise as protests and unrest continue to spread in the country. A dramatic overnight raid in Caracas has ended with the apprehension of Nicolas Maduro by American special forces. As he awaits trial in New York, the White House is already outlining plans for a new era of governance and resource management in Venezuela.
The United States military has captured Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro following a large-scale operation in the capital city. The mission, named Operation Absolute Resolve, began in the early hours of Saturday morning. Using intelligence from a source within the Venezuelan government, US forces tracked Maduro's location for several months. At approximately 2:01 local time, the US Army's Delta Force entered Maduro's fortified compound after disabling the city's power grid. Over 150 aircraft supported the extraction team during the strike, an operation that President Donald Trump said he watched live. Later on Saturday, US President Donald Trump shared a social media post featuring an image of Venezuelan president with the caption, "Nicolas Maduro on board the USS Iwo Jima." Following the capture, Maduro and his wife were flown to a federal detention facility in Brooklyn, New York. The US Department of Justice has charged Maduro with various drug and weapons offenses. President Trump stated that the United States will oversee the administration of Venezuela until a stable transition of power is established. Additionally, American oil companies are expected to enter the country to repair infrastructure and manage resource extraction.
The oil companies are going to go in, they're going to spend money, we're going to take back the oil that, frankly, we should have taken back a long time ago. A lot of money is coming out of the ground. We're going to get reimbursed for all of that. We're going to get reimbursed for everything that we spend. So it's going to be a very important, this is a very big evening that took place last night. We have to be surrounded by safe, secure countries.
In response to the raid, the Venezuelan government declared a national emergency and mobilized its armed forces. While explosions were reported across Caracas, the total number of casualties remains unverified. Vice President Delcy Rodriguez has called for Maduro's immediate release and urged national unity. Despite her protests, the Venezuelan Supreme Court has ruled that she should serve as the interim president. President Trump indicated that US officials have already been in contact with Rodriguez and she had been sworn in as president.
The US military actions against Venezuela have sparked international condemnation. Colombia, Brazil and Cuba have denounced the strikes, emphasizing the need for dialogue. Several countries and organizations have criticized the US moves as violations of international law.
Colombian President Gustavo Petro has strongly condemned the US airstrikes on Venezuela and immediately called for an urgent meeting of the United Nations and the Organization of American States. Petro wrote on his official X account, "Caracas is being bombed right now," adding that the attacks are being carried out with missiles. Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva described the operation as a violation of international law and a disregard for Venezuela's sovereignty. Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel called the action a criminal attack and urged the international community to respond immediately. Mexico's Ministry of Foreign Affairs criticized the operations as a breach of Article 2 of the UN Charter and a threat to regional peace. CARICOM, Latin American countries and other leaders, including the Ecuadorian President Gabriel Noboa, condemned the US operation and called for dialogue. The Cuban government also strongly condemned the US military actions and reaffirmed their support for Venezuela and its population. The Spanish government called for de-escalation and compliance with the principles of international law, while British Prime Minister Keir Starmer confirmed that the UK was not involved and emphasised the importance of upholding international law. The European Union also reacted. EU High Representative for Foreign Affairs Kaja Kallas and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen expressed support for the people of Venezuela and backed a peaceful and democratic transition. Russia condemned the US military actions as armed aggression and called for dialogue, warning that Maduro's capture could further escalate tensions in the region. Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei stressed the need to stand firm against external pressure on the country and its people. Ukrainian Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha highlighted human rights violations under Maduro's regime and called for respect for international law, democracy and the interests of the Venezuelan people.
In the aftermath of the crisis, life in Venezuela is yet to return to normal. In Caracas, the crisis sparked long queues at pharmacies and petrol stations as residents struggled to access supplies. Although the situation has stabilised, residents stock up on essential supplies, fearing the crisis may reignite. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said on Saturday that the country has a new chance to finish this war. Zelensky also has announced plans to meet US President Donald Trump in late January to discuss a peace plan for the ongoing war. Ukrainian President also noted that ahead of the talks, Ukrainian military and security officials will travel to Europe next week to meet with Trump's team in Paris. The discussions are expected to focus on security guarantees and post-war recovery. The meeting follows a previous summit in Florida between the two leaders, where progress was reported on issues in eastern Donbass. And a special working group was set up involving senior US and Russian officials to help move the peace process forward. And North Korea has fired a ballistic missile into the sea off its east coast, according to South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff. Japan's defense ministry says the missile has already landed and posed no immediate threat. The launch comes after Pyongyang's last missile test in November. At the same time, state media reports that leader Kim Jong-un is pushing to more than double the production of tactical guided weapons. In recent weeks, Kim has toured weapons factories, visited a nuclear-powered submarine and overseen missile tests as North Korea prepares for a major ruling party meeting next year expected to set key policy goals. Japan has strongly condemned North Korea's latest missile launch off its east coast. Japan's defense minister said the repeated launches threaten peace and security in the region. He added that Tokyo had lodged a stern protest. Defense minister also noted that the details of the launch are being closely analysed in coordination with Japan, the United States and North Korea.
Such ballistic missile launches violate relevant UN Security Council resolutions and constitute a serious issue concerning the safety of our citizens. Japan has lodged a stern protest and strongly condemned North Korea's missile launch through the embassy route in Beijing. The Ministry of Defense will continue to work closely with the United States, South Korea and other parties to protect the lives and property of our people by dedicating all efforts to information gathering, analysis and vigilance.
And now over to Europe. Switzerland is in deep grief after a deadly fire at a bar in the ski resort of Crans-Montana. Hundreds gathered this weekend to remember the victims as officials continue to identify those who died. Authorities say 16 more people have now been confirmed among the dead and investigations into the tragedy are ongoing.
As Switzerland mourns the New Year's Eve blaze at the Le Constellation bar, hundreds of people gathered on Sunday to remember the victims. A special mass was held outside St. Christoph Church, with mourners standing in the cold after the chapel filled. Religious leaders, officials and members of the public attended. At least 40 people were confirmed dead and 119 others injured. Police have now identified 16 more victims, bringing the total number of identified fatalities to 24. People in the Swiss resort of Crans-Montana have called for an independent criminal inquiry.
One needs a moment to gather oneself, to pray, to come up for air, so to speak. But afterwards, I would like an independent investigation. An independent investigation to know who failed, because when you look at the videos, you see that it catches fire immediately. That's not normal. If everything had been up to standards, in my view, even if someone lit a lighter, it shouldn't be able to burn.
I think that for now, we should be able to share the grief, thank the wave of solidarity that exists, and then keep any possible questions or answers for the morning of January 7th, when the investigation will be able to unfold fully.
Prosecutor Beatrice Pillaud also says the two people who ran the venue are being investigated on suspicion of offences, including negligent homicide.
So, I confirm to you that yesterday, at the end of the day, right at the very end of the day, a criminal investigation was opened against the two managers. This criminal investigation will allow, in collaboration with all the parties concerned, for all leads to be highlighted and explored. I have already said, and I repeat, no lead is being abandoned. All leads are being explored.
As the investigation continues, families are enduring an agonizing wait for news of loved ones still listed as missing, with authorities promising further updates.
Now let's take a look at the major stories from the region. Iran is facing widening unrest as demonstrations over economic hardship spread from Tehran to several provincial cities. Authorities have pushed back against foreign warnings, while the country's top leadership has vowed not to yield.
At least 16 people have been killed and hundreds arrested amid protests across Iran. Furthermore, Iranians are facing internet disruptions, with connections reportedly down by around a third compared with normal levels. Officials say the country recently fended off a major cyber attack, which may be contributing to the slowdown. The protests began a week ago among bazaar traders and shopkeepers in Tehran, angered by a sharp fall in the value of the rial and soaring inflation above 36%. By Tuesday, university students had joined and demonstrations spread to provincial cities. After Donald Trump's warning on Friday that the United States would come to the aid of protesters if they were violently targeted, Iran rejected any foreign interference, with Minister of Foreign Affairs Abbas Araghchi saying Tehran would forcefully reject such actions. A day later, Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, addressed the unrest, saying the Islamic Republic will not yield to the enemy and that rioters must be put in their place. He said the shopkeepers' initial concerns over the currency were legitimate, but accused enemy-provoked elements of exploiting the protests. Earlier, President Masoud Pezeshkian acknowledged that failings by the authorities had contributed to the crisis. At the same time, Iran's economy has been under strain for years due to US and Western sanctions, compounded by regional tensions.
Azerbaijan and Turkey have signed a new agreement on the supply of 33 billion cubic meters of natural gas, according to Turkish Energy and Natural Resources Minister Alparslan Bayraktar. Under the deal, gas from Azerbaijan's Absheron field in the Caspian Sea will be delivered over a 15-year period. Supplies are set at 2.25 billion cubic meters per year, with the agreement due to take effect in 2029 and run into the 2040s. The natural gas will be transported to Turkey through the existing Baku-Tbilisi-Erzurum pipeline. President of Azerbaijan, Ilham Aliyev, received a delegation from the United States, with the meeting focused on bilateral ties between the two nations as well as regional developments in the South Caucasus. The US delegation congratulated the head of state on the achievements reached in Washington in August 2025 regarding the advancing of the peace agenda between Azerbaijan and Armenia. President Aliyev stressed that Baku would continue to promote regional peace. He also highlighted that the unfair Section 907 amendment to the Freedom Support Act doesn't correspond to current state of relations between the two countries. President Aliyev highly appreciated the suspension of the amendment by US President Donald Trump. And Russia remains Armenia's main grain supplier in 2025, accounting for 99.8% of the country's grain imports between January and November. The Economy Ministry of Armenia noted that the structure of grain imports has remained almost unchanged in recent years. More than 99% of supplies continue to be provided consistently through the Russian market, highlighting Armenia's dependence on imports from Russia. By the end of the year, Armenia was expected to import a further 108,000 tonnes of grain. And Chinese investment in Kyrgyzstan has surpassed $2 billion, focusing mainly on mining, manufacturing and renewable energy. Major infrastructure projects include the China-Kyrgyzstan-Uzbekistan Railway, which is set to enhance the country's transit capacity.
Chinese direct investment into Kyrgyzstan has reached more than $2 billion, according to new data released by the Eurasian Development Bank. The bank reports that the accumulated Chinese investment has increased steadily over the past decade, rising from below $1 billion in the mid-2010s to its current level by the first half of 2025. Kyrgyzstan now accounts for almost 6% of China's total investment portfolio in Central Asia. Most of this capital is concentrated in mining and manufacturing sectors that remain central to the country's industrial structure. Chinese investment is also expanding into renewable energy. One of the key projects is the construction of a solar power plant in Balakchi, financed through a combination of the investors' own funds and borrowed resources, with institutional support from Kyrgyzstan's Green Energy Fund. Large-scale infrastructure is another priority. A major regional project is the China-Kyrgyzstan-Uzbekistan Railway, implemented with the participation of China Railway International. China holds a controlling stake, and its investment is estimated at more than $3.5 billion. The railway is expected to be launched by the end of the decade with a total length of over 500 kilometers, more than half of it running through Kyrgyzstan. The line is intended to become a key transit corridor linking China with the Middle East and Europe, strengthening the country's transit capacity. The Eurasian Development Bank also points to a solid waste recycling plant in Bishkek and plans for a coal logistics center in the Osh region, both involving Chinese investors. Fariza Kalimurtina, Almaty, A News.
Uzbekistan ended 2025 with lower inflation than the previous year, despite a rise in food prices in December. Official data shows that overall price growth slowed, while pressures remain in the services sector. Our correspondent Sevil Rajapova has more.
Uzbekistan's annual inflation rate stood at 7.3% in 2025, around a quarter lower than a year earlier and in line with the central bank's forecast. In December, monthly consumer price growth edged up to 0.9%, slightly higher than in November, but still below the level recorded in December last year. Officials say price dynamics were influenced by seasonal factors, with inflation gradually accelerating from August. Food prices recorded the sharpest increase, rising 1.5% in December, the highest monthly growth since March. On an annual basis, food inflation reached 5.5%, more than double the level seen at the end of 2024. Excluding food, monthly inflation slowed to 0.4%, while non-food goods rose 5.1% over the year, down from 7.7% previously. Inflation in the services sector eased compared to last year but remains elevated at 13.9%. Regionally, the highest annual inflation was recorded in Fergana region and Kirkuk, Pakistan, while Jizakh region saw the lowest price growth. In Tashkent, inflation remained slightly below the national average. It is Sivil Rajab reporting from Tashkent, Uzbekistan, A News.
Syrians began exchanging old banknotes for new ones in a move aimed at strengthening the country's weakened currency. The new notes, which drop 2 zeros from the old ones, are part of President Ahmed al-Shara's plan to rebuild state institutions and revive the economy after years of war and sanctions. While some bankers warn the change could push up prices, the central bank says the swap will be carried out in a smooth and orderly way. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has formally welcomed a significant defence agreement involving the sale of Turkish-made Hürjet training aircraft to Spain. Under the terms of the deal, the Spanish Air Force will acquire 30 of the advanced jets for a total of 2.6 billion euros. During an address in Istanbul, the president highlighted this contract as evidence of Turkey's innovative and leading role in the global aviation sector. He further noted that the partnership confirms the nation's growing influence as a key player in the international defence industry. And finally, in Turkey's Trabzon province, the ancient Sümele Monastery has been transformed into a breathtaking winter spectacle after recent snowfall, highlighting the dramatic beauty of this historic site perched high above the Altındere Valley.
The ancient Sümele Monastery in Turkey's northern Trabzon province has been transformed into a striking winter scene following recent snowfall, as harsh winter conditions continue to affect much of the country. Dating back to the 4th century and also known as the Monastery of the Virgin Mary, Sümele perches 300 metres above the Altındere Valley on steep cliffs. Drone footage has captured the snow-covered monument, carved directly into the rock face of Mount Karadag, showcasing its dramatic setting. The monastery, listed on UNESCO's tentative World Heritage List, has undergone extensive restoration in recent years. After an 88-year hiatus, it was reopened for religious practice in August 2010. Located in Trabzon's Matska district, Sümele Monastery remains a popular destination for both domestic and international tourists year-round. Its wintertime snow cover, however, adds a particularly striking dimension to this unique historical landmark.
You're up to date with World News this hour. Thank you for watching and stay tuned to A News.